Gender division is a widespread social hierarchy that isn't often recognized in politics. Many people think it's natural and unchangeable, but it's based on social expectations and stereotypes. Boys and girls are raised with the idea that women's primary responsibility is housework and childcare. This leads to a division of labor. Women do most of the work at home, while men handle most of the work outside. This division affects women's roles in public life, including politics. Look, this is an ongoing sensitive topic, so I shall present the latest facts of this year as well. Some may make you feel good, some not. At times, you may feel disgusted, but it's the truth. Let us discuss it with an open mind and welcome logic and debates from each corner of intellect. Let us begin. Over time, women worldwide organized and fought for equal rights. They demanded the right to vote and participate in public affairs. These movements aimed not only at political and legal equality, but also at changing personal and family life. These movements are known as feminist movements. The political expression of gender division and mobilization on this issue has improved women's role in public life. In India, women still face gender disparities, although there has been some progress since independence. India remains a male-dominated, patriarchal society. But this statement is true for Western and Central India. Northeastern states, Bengal, and the southern states are still matriarchal. These were the regions least affected by the Arabic invasions of medieval times. This video is not a good place to link those two. If you need a video on that, please comment down below. In general, women have lower literacy rates, and fewer girls pursue higher education due to unequal resource allocation within families. Women often work more hours than men, but their work is undervalued and unpaid. This is because women mostly work in their houses and keep the system running, which is a very important part of a society. As these actions do not generate revenue directly, it's often said that women do unpaid labor. Personally speaking, I cannot put a price tag on a good mother, so I leave this discussion open-ended. Please subscribe the channel too for more such summary content. This will add value to your preparation. Let us talk about women who work to generate revenue for the family. Let's talk about the gender wage gap. Despite the Equal Remuneration Act of 1976, women are often paid less than men for the same work across various fields. This wage gap persists in sports, cinema, factories, and agriculture. It's a significant issue that needs attention. According to the latest data published by the World Economic Forum, India has jumped 8 places in the ranking towards equality. Despite the recent improvements, we are still at 127th out of 146 countries. However, let's look into it in a different light. Say you are a factory owner making plastic toys and employ 100 workers. The pay gap suggests that you, as an owner, can get away with paying less to a female worker than a male worker for the same job with identical work hours per day. For example, you pay 100 to men and 80 to women for the exact same output. Why would you not hire exclusively women? Your production remains the same and you save 20%. This does not mean there is no discrimination at all. As stated earlier, it's an open debate. Whatever your answer to this, be respectful in the comments section. Now, we move to some serious topic of sex-selective abortions. In India, there's a disturbing trend of sex-selective abortion, leading to a decline in the child-sex ratio, with fewer girl children compared to boys in some regions. In 2023, India's overall sex ratio stands at 10-20 females for every 1,000 males, reflecting a positive change compared to the 2011 census, where the ratio was 943 females to 1,000 males. Government measures to combat sex selection, including banning gender identification tests, have contributed to this social change. In rural areas, the sex ratio is 985 females to 1,000 males, while the sex ratio at birth in the last 5 years is 929 females for every 1,000 males. Female infanticide issue as a nation has been tackled pretty well. However, some states are doing well and covering things up for others. As per the National Health Survey 2019 to 21, Several Indian states have notably high sex ratios. Kerala leads the list with a sex ratio of 1121 females per 1,000 males, followed by Rajasthan, 1099, Bihar, 1090, Tamil Nadu, 1088, Manipur, 1066, Odisha, 1063, Jharkhand, 1050, Telangana, 1049, West Bengal, 1049, and Andhra Pradesh, 1045. Except for Rajasthan and Bihar, the rest have matriarchal societies, partially if not strictly. However, according to the same survey, the states with the lowest sex ratios are Haryana with 926 females per 1,000 males, followed by Punjab at 938, Gujarat at 965, Maharashtra at 966, and Madhya Pradesh at 970. State governments will have to get involved in these as well. We shall discuss the same in some other video. Now we shall look into gender-based violence, both registered and unregistered ones. But what is considered gender violence? If violence is directed against a person because of that person's gender or violence that affects persons of a particular gender disproportionately. But there is a lot of gray area and varies from country to country. In India, reports of harassment, exploitation, and violence against women are being reported regularly. Urban areas, in particular, have become unsafe for women, even within their homes. Domestic violence is a significant concern. For starters, the National Crime Records Bureau publishes the data on crime against women, which is available for the year up to 2020. The data published by NCRB shows a declining trend in the crime against women, which was 371,503 in the year 2020, as against 405,326 in the year 2019. However, a total of 430,000 cases of crimes against women were registered across India in 2021, which is a jump from 2020 data. These faults cannot be rectified without legislative intervention. Here are the legislations enacted by the Indian government to safeguard women's rights. The Immoral Traffic Prevention Act of 1956, the Dowry Prohibition Act of 1961, the Indecent Representation of Women, Prohibition Act of 1986, the Commission of Sati Act of 1987, Protection of Women from Domestic Violence, Act of 2005, the Sexual Harassment of Women at Workplace Prevention, Prohibition, and Redressal Act of 2013, the Muslim Women Protection of Rights on Marriage Act of 2019. All these legislations intend to protect women from various kinds of violence. This process can be facilitated better if women are directly involved in the legislative process. Let us see women's political representation in India. Recognizing that women's issues need more attention, feminists and women's movements advocate for greater female political representation. India has historically had a low representation of women in its legislatures, including Lok Sabha, where women's representation reached nearly 15% for the first time in 2019, which is an all-time high in Indian political history. However, in state assemblies, their representation is less than 5%. To address this issue, India has introduced reservations in local government bodies like Panchayati Raj, reserving 1/3 of seats for women. There are now over 10 lakh elected women representatives in rural and urban local bodies. In 2023, the government introduced a bill to improve women's participation in Lok Sabha. The proposed legislation defines the 33% women reservation to continue for 15 years. Additionally, it mandates that a quota for individuals belonging to the scheduled castes and scheduled tribes be established within the reserved seats designated for women in Parliament and Legislative Assembly. This is supposed to take effect after the 2026 census. Political impact is the driving force at the core of any legislation. Gender division demonstrates the importance of addressing social divisions in politics. It also highlights that disadvantaged groups benefit when these divisions become political issues. The gains made by women in India may not have been possible without raising the issue of their unequal treatment in the political domain. We will have a clearer picture once the 2026 implementation is complete. Moving to the next topic of interest for the chapter, religion, communalism, and politics. Before we delve deeper, we must know what these two terms mean. Scholars have not reached a consensus on the definition of religion. However, there are two general approaches to defining it: the functional perspective and the philosophical perspective. Émile Durkheim, a French sociologist, described religion as a unified system of beliefs and practices concerning sacred entities which are considered separate and prohibited. These beliefs and practices bring together individuals into a single moral community referred to as a church, consisting of those who adhere to them. Max Lind Stackhouse, professor of Reformed theology, on the other hand, defined religion as a comprehensive worldview or metaphysical moral vision that is regarded as binding because it is inherently perceived as true and just, even if not all aspects of it can be fully confirmed or disproved. But, with a very big but, none of these definitions hold for Hinduism, as there is no set of rules or a prophet. Religion inherently is a Western construct of belief systems. On the other hand, communalism is described as an ideology stating the division between states, be it people, groups of people, or communities based on ethnicity, religion, beliefs, values, etc. Let us move to the chapter. Religious division is another form of social division that, like gender, is prevalent in various countries, including India. Even within a single religion, there can be significant differences in how people practice their faith. These religious differences often intersect with politics, leading to various consequences. Some key aspects to consider include the relationship between religion and politics. Mahatma Gandhi believed that politics should be guided by ethical values drawn from religion, emphasizing moral values that transcend specific religious affiliations. Talking of India, any form of legislative discrimination amongst religions should cease to exist. But discrimination can take both positive and negative forms. Negative discrimination involves putting someone at a disadvantage due to their protected characteristics, such as not promoting a qualified individual because of their religion. Positive discrimination, on the other hand, entails favoring someone because of their protected characteristics, even if they are less qualified. For example, promoting a disabled individual over a more qualified, non-disabled person. The aim of positive discrimination is often to reduce workplace inequality, but it may not always be ethically or legally justified. However, positive discrimination can turn into appeasement in politics. In the realm of politics, appeasement typically refers to the act of offering political or material concessions to a potentially hostile entity as a means of preventing conflict. Yet, over time, it has evolved into a strategy employed by politicians to gain public support for electoral victories. If a legislature favors a certain religion predominantly or exclusively, it can be termed appeasement politics. Coming back, communalism arises when religion is used as the basis for defining a nation, as seen in the case of Northern Ireland. It becomes problematic when religion is expressed in exclusive, partisan terms, leading to conflicts. Communal politics is based on the belief that religion is the primary basis of social community. It assumes that followers of a particular religion form a single community with identical interests, and differences are considered irrelevant. This divisive approach can lead to intolerance and violence. We have already faced partitions in western and eastern borders in 1947 because of the demand for an Islamic state, currently called Pakistan and Bangladesh. It has many different forms in politics. Communalism is often expressed through everyday beliefs, religious prejudices, stereotypes, and claims of religious superiority. It can lead to majoritarian dominance in the case of the majority community and a desire for a separate political entity among the minority community. The Kashmiri exodus of the early 1990s is a living example of the same, where they are living as refugees in their own country. Communal politics involves mobilizing followers of one religion through the use of sacred symbols, religious leaders, emotional appeals, and sometimes fear. In its most severe form, communalism results in communal violence, riots, and massacres. Since independence, India has always maintained a constitutional commitment to secularism. The major incidences include the 1969 Gujarat riots, the 1984 anti-Sikh riots, the 1989 Bhagalpur riots, the 1989 Kashmir violence, the Godhra train burning, the 2002 Gujarat riots, 2013 Muzaffarnagar riots. But what is a secular state, and what linked constitutional provisions restrict such behavior? The framers of the Indian Constitution recognized the challenge of communalism and chose a secular state model. The Indian Constitution upholds religious freedom, prohibits discrimination based on religion, and allows state intervention to ensure equality within religious communities. Ex-PM Indira Gandhi introduced the word secularism in the Indian Constitution in 1976 during the emergency she had enforced. Secularism is not just an ideology, but forms a principle of India, intended to combat communalism. It's important to understand that communalism is not only a threat to certain individuals or groups, it endangers the very essence of India as a civilizational entity. Combating communalism requires not only a secular constitution, but also a continuous effort to counter religious prejudices and religious-based mobilization, both in daily life and the political arena. I would like you to answer a question in the comment section, but make sure to use dissent words for the same. Ready. Here it is. How do you think UCC or Universal Civil Code do? Will it increase equality amongst all religions, hence making India a more secular state, or it will increase the difference even further? Comment your answer below. The population proportions of 6 major religious communities in India are analyzed thoroughly. Since independence, the total population of each community has increased significantly, but their relative proportions have remained relatively stable. Hindus, Jains, and Christians have seen marginal declines in their proportions since 1961, while the proportions of Muslims, Sikhs, and Buddhists have slightly increased. According to India's last census in 2011, about 14.2% of the total population identified as Muslims. Despite a common misconception that the Muslim population might overtake other religious communities, expert estimates suggest only a small increase of about 3 to 4% in the next 50 years, indicating that the overall population balance among different religious communities is unlikely to undergo significant changes. However, this view has been challenged by the fact that the fertility rate of Muslims is 2.4, while that of Hindus is 1.9. The fertility rate is a way to count how many babies are born on average to women in a specific place during their lifetime. New conclusions are yet to be drawn on the matter. Moreover, the border districts of West Bengal and Assam have undergone major demographic changes in the last decade. This can be attributed to mainly illegal immigration from Bangladesh and Myanmar. Moving on to the next section, where we will discuss the role of caste and how is it relevant to Indian politics. India is a diverse nation, not only in terms of its cultural and religious fabric, but also its social composition. Let's learn the term first. The term caste originated from the Portuguese word casta, initially used to describe India's social structure. Notably, there is no native equivalent in Sanskrit or any Indian language. The Gita in chapter 4, verse 13 explains varna, which was erroneously translated as caste. This misconception, perpetuated under British colonial education, affected how both outsiders and educated Indians perceived their society. The British census solidified these rigid caste boundaries, categorizing entire communities into a single occupational group, further reinforcing these identities. The Indian government later used this caste division to implement affirmative action, inadvertently amplifying these divisions. Politicians exploited caste categories for vote bank politics, leading to social issues. Regrettably, Western scholars and their Indian followers have often attributed these problems to Hinduism, when they are rooted in historical misinterpretations and colonial legacies. The Census of India plays a crucial role in documenting this diversity. Every 10 years, it records the religion of each Indian based on how they describe their beliefs. This method ensures that even individuals who identify as having no religion or being atheist are accurately represented. As a result, we have reliable data on the proportions of different religious communities in the country and how they have evolved over the years. A pattern is observed among major caste groups. The census recognizes 2 broad social groups: the scheduled castes, commonly known as Dalits, and the scheduled tribes, often referred to as Adivasis. These groups encompass hundreds of castes and tribes listed in an official schedule. In 2011, scheduled castes constituted 16.6% of the population, while scheduled tribes made up 8.6%. The census does not yet count the other backward classes, OBCs, leading to variations in estimations of their population proportion. The National Sample Survey of 2004-05 approximated their population to be around 41%. When considering scheduled castes, scheduled tribes, and OBCs together, these groups account for approximately 2/3 of the country's population and about 3/4 of the Hindu population, illustrating the significant social diversity within India. Caste plays a significant role in Indian politics, and it stems from the belief that caste is the primary basis of social community. This belief assumes that people of the same caste share common interests that differ from those of other castes. However, this belief does not always hold, as caste is just one aspect of Indian society, not the sole defining factor. Caste-related political dynamics manifest in various ways. First is candidate selection. Political parties often consider the caste composition of the electorate when choosing candidates to secure necessary support in elections. When forming governments, parties aim for representation from different castes and tribes. Next is caste appeals. Political parties and candidates make appeals to caste sentiments to garner support. Some parties are seen as favoring specific castes and are considered their representatives. But the true goal is empowerment. The universal adult franchise has awakened consciousness among previously marginalized castes, motivating them to participate in politics. Despite the importance of caste in politics, elections are not solely about caste, but also involve other factors like no parliamentary constituency has a clear majority of a single caste, necessitating candidates to gain the confidence of multiple castes. Parties do not win all votes from a particular caste. The term vote bank implies that a substantial portion of a caste votes for a particular party. Multiple candidates from the same caste may contest elections, while many voters may not have a candidate from their caste. Incumbent MPs or MLAs often lose elections, illustrating that castes and communities do not have fixed political preferences. Please like and share this video if you have found it to be informative thus far. It will be a great boost for the channel. Moving on. Although caste plays a role in electoral politics, voters often have stronger attachments to political parties. Economic conditions, rich-poor, and gender divisions within a caste influence voting choices. Assessment of government performance and the popularity of leaders also have a significant impact. Conversely, politics influences the caste system and identities by bringing them into the political arena. This process includes caste groups incorporating neighboring castes that were previously excluded. They form coalitions with other castes or communities. The emergence of new political caste groups like backward and forward castes. Caste-based inequalities persist even today, impacting economic disparities and access to resources. While explicit, formal caste-based discrimination is now prohibited and has significantly lowered, the historical advantages and disadvantages accumulated over the colonial period continue to influence contemporary society. Additionally, new forms of inequality have emerged based on their financial status. Although the relationship between caste and economic status has evolved, caste remains closely linked to economic well-being in several ways. Economic status, as measured by criteria such as monthly consumption expenditure, still reflects the traditional caste hierarchy, with upper castes at the top, Dalits and Adivasi at the bottom, and backward classes in between. Extreme poverty is more prevalent among the lower castes and less common among the upper castes, with the backward classes again occupying an intermediate position. These disparities highlight the enduring impact of caste on economic inequality in contemporary India. One should remember that in Hinduism, there were no castes. Instead, people chose job trades that suited their abilities. The term caste has European origins, derived from the Portuguese word castas, which in turn comes from the Latin word castus, meaning race. Both caste and Dalit were introduced by European Christian missionaries. The term Dalit originated in a Scottish Christian missionary school around 1835 AD. Looking at the poverty rates by caste and community groups in both rural and urban areas for the year 1999 to 2000 tells us about the percentage of people living below the poverty line. For scheduled tribes, it is 45.8% rural and 35.6% urban. In scheduled castes, 35.9% rural and 38.3% urban. For other backward classes, 27.0% rural and 29.5% urban. Muslim upper castes, 26.8% rural and 34.2% urban. In Hindu upper castes, 11.7% rural and 9.9% urban. Christian upper castes, 9.6% rural and 5.4% urban. For Sikh upper castes, 0% rural and 4.9% for urban. Other upper castes, 16.0% rural and 2.7% urban. Adding all these and averaging out will give SC, ST, or OBC categories. Below the poverty line indicates individuals who spent $327 or less per person per month in rural areas and $454 or less per person per month in urban areas. Data source: National Sample Survey Organization, NSSO, Government of India, 55th round, 1999 to 2000. This survey is over 20 years old. It's also important to note that Hindu scriptures, written in Sanskrit, use the term varna, which translates to sort into natural qualities when rendered in English. The concept of caste as commonly understood today was not present in the original Hindu scriptures, which focused on varna. However, caste politics do provide space for disadvantaged communities to demand their share of power, particularly for Dalits and OBCs, who gain better access to decision-making. However, exclusive focus on caste can divert attention from pressing issues like poverty, development, and corruption, and in some cases, it can lead to tensions, conflict, and violence. Subscribe for more. See you in the next video.